Welcome back to Easily Explained, where today we will be talking about how to find the slope of 2 points. So let's get started. In the last video, we talked about finding slopes when the line is already graphed. We can use the rise over run method, but today we are going to be talking about how to find the slope when a graph is not given, when all we're given is 2 points. How do we solve for their slope without graphing them? We're also going to be going over just some more about slopes and some general things that you should know about slopes. When we were talking about graphs, when the line was graphed, we first found the vertical change and the horizontal change, and then we said, well, slope is vertical change over horizontal change. It's rise over run. And that's our slope. When we're finding the slope of 2 points, in theory, we're doing the exact same thing. We're finding the vertical change and the horizontal change. But how we do it is a little bit different. Let's learn how to find the vertical change and the horizontal change when 2 points are given. So first, let's start out with 2 points. For example, our first point coordinate is 1, 2, and the second one is 5, 8. So now, the first thing that we always want to do is label the coordinates. It makes it a lot easier to identify which one you need to identify the horizontal and vertical changes. So since this is our first x coordinate, we're going to label it x1. This is our first y. And then we have x2 and y2. It doesn't matter if the order was given to us switched, like 5, 8. 5 would be x1. It doesn't matter about that. What matters is you differentiate between x and y, because one is going to be the horizontal change, the other one is going to be the vertical change. X, if you think about a graph, the x-axis is the horizontal one, so that's why. All right, now we have a nice little equation here that will actually help us from this point. So our equation, m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Let's go deeper into this. M, if you recall from the last video, the variable that we use for slope is m. Basically, slope is equal to y2, 8, minus y1, 2, over x2, 5, minus 1. Now, sometimes we get a little bit confused, and we say, well, why can't we do y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2? You can. The formula is just given this way. But the only important part is that you have to be consistent. So that means if you do y1 minus y2, you also have to do x1 minus x2. You can't switch them around. That's why you should label them so you don't get confused. Another very important thing to remember is that you cannot do x2 minus x1 over y2 minus y1, or even x1 minus x2 over y1 minus y2. Do not do that. Because if you'll remember, if we go back to when we were talking about graphs, it was always vertical change over horizontal change. Always rise over run, never run over rise. If you do run over rise, in this case you would have gotten 1 over 40, which is wrong, totally wrong. So make sure, that's why labeling is very important, that you're using the right coordinates. All right, now let's apply this formula for these 2 points. I'm going to start with y2, which is 8, minus y1 is 2, over x2 minus x1. Now we're going to simplify this. 8 minus 2, 6. 5 minus 1, 4. But also remember that you always want your slope to be in simplified form. And this can be further simplified because 6 and 4 both go into 2. So to simplify, we would divide the numerator and the denominator by 2, and we would get 3 over 2. So the slope between 1, 2 and 5, 8 is 3 over 2. All right, now let's move on to some general things to know about slopes. The larger the slope is, the steeper the line that its graph is gonna make. Let's test this theory out. I have 2 separate lines. One is steeper than the other. Number 2 is steeper. And we're gonna test it out, see which one of these slopes is larger. All right, the first thing we have to do for number 1, our vertical change is 1, horizontal change is also 1, m is 1 over 1, or just 1. All right, let's test out number 2. Vertical change, 1, 2, 3, horizontal change, 1. M equals 3 over 1, or 3. And 3 is greater than 1. And yes, this is steeper. So the larger the slope gets, the steeper the line gets. The other thing to know about slopes is the slopes of vertical and horizontal lines. Whenever there's a vertical line, m is always undefined. Why? Let's check it out. We have this vertical line here. We're going to take 2 points, this point and this point, and we're going to solve for their slope. So our first point is 1, 0, and our second point is 1, 1. All right, so we have x1, y1, x2, and y2. Let's solve for m. 1 minus 0 over 1 minus 1. All right, we have 1 over 0. Now, in fractions, if you ever have a 0 at the bottom, it's undefined, because there's no way to divide a number by 0. You can divide 0 by a number, that just becomes 0. But the minute you flip it and say 1 divided by 0, well, this is undefined. If you put it in your calculator, it'll probably say something like error or something like that, because it's undefined. There's literally no way to do it. And we know vertical lines are when the x coordinates are the same. So if you're ever given 2 of the same x coordinates and you're told to find the slope, it's going to be undefined because they form a vertical line. In a horizontal line, m is equal to 0. Let's try to find the slope between point 1, 1 and 2, 1. All right, we have x1, y1, x2, y2. 1 minus 1 over 2 minus 1. 0 over 1. And like I said before, this is equal to 0. The slope of the line is 0. Also, if we look back to the definition of slope, the rate of change, the rate in which the y value is increasing. Well, in this case, the y value is not increasing. It's just staying constant. It's not increasing at all. There's no change at all. So the rate of change is 0. And that happens in horizontal lines, which means that happens when the y value is the same. And now it's time for practice. So find the slope of the 2 points for all 3 exercises. Pause the video now and start the practice. Also, make sure your answers are fully simplified. Alright, let's go over number 1. So the first step is always to label. So we have x1, y1, x2, and y2. And now our formula, we're going to do 8 minus 2 over 15 minus 0. So we have m is equal to, up here we got 6, down here we got 15. Remember, we are simplifying. These both go into 3, so we're going to divide the numerator and the denominator by 3, and we get 2 over 5. So your slope is 2/5. Alright, number 2. Now when we see repeating numbers, we should automatically get suspicious. And we know that something is up. 2 numbers are the same. So that means we're either getting a horizontal line or a vertical line. If you can't tell whether it's horizontal or vertical, you should just imagine a graph. If we have a graph, and we say that this is 5, 5, and 8. So this is 5 on the x-axis, and then 5 and 8. 5, 5, and 5, 8. Now you can tell that this is forming a vertical line. So that means that our slope is undefined. You could also use the same method. Do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and then you would get a 0 in the denominator, but then you have to be able to identify that 0 can't be in the denominator, which means it's undefined. If you don't have that much practice with that, if you confuse it as 0 in the denominator means that it's 0, then you should try this method instead. And now for number 3, we're going to do the same thing. This one has a negative number. So in formula-wise and theory-wise, it's the exact same thing. But you just have to be a little bit more careful that you are performing the correct operation.
So we have x1, y1, x2, and y2 here. And so we're going to do y2 for minus negative 2 over x2 minus x1, so 7 minus 9. And so when we have the double negative, it becomes 4 plus 2, and then 7 minus 9. So we have 6 over 7 minus 9, which then 7 minus 9 becomes negative 2. So we get 6 over negative 2, which is equal to negative 3. Why is it equal to negative 3 though? Because we divide the numerator and the denominator both by 2, and then we get 3 over negative 1, And so that's where we get the negative 3 from.
Congratulations, you are now an expert at finding the slopes of 2 points on a line. If this video helped, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye!